Chapter 3 Milk. It was my turn to play storyteller. And so I began. But was began the right word? Hadn't Dry and I been telling each other this story ever since we were old enough to realize the menace at its heart? Once a boy came running in from play and asked, "Mother, what is milk?" My friends say it is creamy and white and has the sweetest taste, second only to the nectar of the gods. "Please, Mother, I want milk to drink." The mother, who was too poor to buy milk, mixed some flour and water, added jaggery, and gave it to the boy. The boy drank it and danced in joy, saying, "Now I, too, know what milk tastes like." And the mother, who through all the years of her hardship had never shed a tear, wept at his trust and her deception. For hours the storm had flung itself at our walls. The ill-fitting shutters that covered the windows hadn't managed to keep out the gusts of freezing rain. The floor was slippery with wetness and the carpet at our feet sodden. I sighed, knowing it would smell of mold for weeks. The lamps flickered, threatening to abandon us to darkness. From time to time, a moth dived into a flame with a sizzling sound, a brief burning smell. On such nights, when the sudden crack of thunder flung our hearts up and down in startled exhilaration, Dry and I told each other stories to keep our minds occupied. For though our days were overcrowded with lessons, our evenings stretched before us bare as a desert. The only one who ever shattered their monotony by his visits was Krishna. But he came and went without warning, taking mischievous pleasure in his unpredictability. The stories kept us from wondering too much about the rest of Drupad's family, his queens, and the other children whom we saw only on state occasions. What were they doing? Was our father in their lighted, laughing chambers? Why didn't he invite us to join them? Dry shook his head. No! No! The story must start earlier. Very well, I said, hiding a smile. When King Sagar discovered that his ancestors had been burnt to ashes by the anger of the great mendicant Kapil. At other times, my brother took my teasing equably, but now it irritated him. It was as though the story made him regress into a younger, more anxious self. "You're wasting time," he scowled. "You know that's too early. Start with the two boys, the other ones." Once in an innocent time, the son of a Brahmin and the son of a king were sent to the ashram of a great sage to study. Here they spent many years together, growing into the best of friends, and when it was time for each to return to his home, they wept. The prince said to his schoolmate, "Drona, I will never forget you. Come to me when I become king of Panchal, and all I have will be yours as well." The Brahmin embraced the prince and said, "Dear Drupad, your friendship means more to me than all the riches in the treasury of the gods. I will hold your words in my heart forever." Each went his way, the prince to learn the ways of the court, the Brahmin to study further with Pursuram, the renowned scholar-warrior. He mastered the arts of war, married a virtuous woman, and had a beautiful son. Though poor, he was proud of his learning and dreamed often of the day when he would teach his son all he knew. Until one day the boy came home from play asking for milk, and his wife wept. Were the stories we told each other true? Who knows? At the best of times, a story is a slippery thing. Certainly no one had told us this particular one, though it was the tale we most needed to know. It was, after all, the reason for our existence. We'd had to cobble it together from rumors and lies, dark hints Daimon let fall, and our own agitated imaginings. Perhaps that was why it changed with each telling. Or is that the nature of all stories, the reason for their power? Dry was still dissatisfied. "You're looking at the story through the wrong window," he said. "You've got to close it and open a different one." "Here, I'll do it." A young prince inherited a troubled kingdom, a court filled with intrigue, legacy of a complacent king who had trusted his nobles too much. After much strife and bloodshed, when the son managed to establish his power over these same nobles, he promised himself that he would not repeat his father's error. He ruled well but watchfully, making closer friends with justice than with mercy. And always he listened for whispers and mocking laughter, which to him were the forerunners of insurgents. "You're too partial," I complained. "You're always trying to make him look good, pretending he wasn't at fault." He shrugged. "He is our father, after all. He deserves some partiality." "I'm taking back the story," I said. One day, while the king held court, a Brahmin came into the hall and stood in front of him. The king was surprised to see that though his clothes were threadbare, the man did not look like a supplicant. He stood as straight as a flame, his head held high, his eyes shining like agates. A submerged memory half rose in the king's mind, and sank again. Around him he could hear murmurs, courtiers wondering who the stranger was. He ordered a counselor to lead the stranger to the treasury, where each day gifts were given to the needy, but the Brahmin shook off the man's hand. "Drupad," he said, his voice reverberating through the hall, "I am no beggar. I come to hold you to your promise of friendship. Once you asked that I should come and live with you, that all you had would be mine also. I do not want your riches, but I ask that you find a place for me at your court. You will gain much from this, for I will share with you the secret science of warfare that my guru taught me. No enemy would dare to approach Panchal with me at your side." I paused, knowing Dry wanted the next part. Like lightning an image etched itself against the king's eyelids, two boys embracing, wiping their tears at parting time. That old, dear name was on his tongue, Drona. But behind him, people were laughing, pointing at the mad Brahmin, for surely he was mad to speak with such presumption to the king. If Drupad acknowledged him, if he stepped down from the royal dais and took him by the hand, would they laugh at him, too? Would they think him weak and fanciful, unfit to rule? He could not risk it. "Brahmin," he said sternly, "how can a learned man such as you claim to bespeak such folly? Do you not know that friendship is possible only between equals? Go to the treasury door, and the gatekeeper will see to it that you get enough alms to live a comfortable life." Drona stared at him for a moment. Drupad thought he could see his body shaking with rage and disbelief. He braced himself, thinking he would shout, lay a curse upon him, maybe, like Brahmins were known to do. But Drona merely turned on his heel and left. None of the courtiers, when questioned later, knew where he went. For days, weeks, perhaps months, Drupad could not taste anything he ate. Regret layered his mouth like mud. At night, lying sleepless, he considered sending messengers across the country, secretly, in search of his friend. In the morning it always seemed a foolish notion. Dry stopped. Having shaped our father's motivations the way he wished them to be, he was willing to let me tell the rest. Time is the great eraser, both of sorrow and of joy. In time, the incident grew dim in Drupad's memory. In time, he married and fathered children, though none turned out to be as gifted a warrior as he had hoped. The old rebellious nobles died or retired to their ancestral villages. The new ones respected or feared him, so that he believed himself to be safe. For him this was the same as happiness. Until one dawn, before the sun was up, he was awakened by the sentries on the palace walls blowing their horns. The Kaurava army was at the gates of Campilia. Drupad was mystified. He'd had little to do with the Kaurava clan, whose kingdom lay to the northwest, in Hastinapur. From what he'd heard, their blind ruler, Dhritarashtra, was a quiet, careful man. Why would they attack him without provocation? He gathered his own formidable forces, and when he marched on the intruders, he was further mystified to find that the leaders of the foray were mere teenagers, the Kaurava princes, he gathered. What folly had possessed them? It was easy enough to rout their army. But as he turned his chariot back in victory, a new chariot approached him, moving so fast that he could not tell from where it came. A cloud of arrows flew from it, darkening the entire sky, cutting Drupad off from his army and causing his horses to rear up in alarm. Before his charioteer could calm them, a young man had leaped from the other chariot onto his. His sword was at Drupad's throat. "We do not wish to harm you," the young man said, "but you must come with my brothers and myself as our prisoner." Dry laid a finger on my lips. For some paradoxical reason, he wanted to narrate the moment that pained him most, that laid bare his longing. Even in mortal danger, Drupad could not but admire the young man, his poise, his courtesy, his skill at arms. A fleeting yearning rose up in him. "If only he were my son." "Don't say that," I interrupted angrily. "You're the best son a father could ever desire. Aren't you giving up your entire life to get King Drupad what he wants, senseless though it is?" "Go on with the story," he said. "Who are you?" Drupad asked. "And why have you attacked me when I have no enmity with you?" "I am Arjun, son of the late King Pandu," the young man said. "I have captured you at my guru's bidding." "Who is your guru?" A flash of proud love illumined Arjun's face. "He is the greatest teacher of warcraft," he said. "He taught us princes for many years. Now our studies are complete, and for his dakshina he has asked that we capture you. You must know of him. His name is Drona." I paused here to picture the moment. How would Arjun have looked? How would he move? Was he good-looking as well as brave? Krishna, to whom he was related through some convoluted family tie, had mentioned his many accomplishments from time to time, piquing my interest. Though I would never confess this to Dry, for me Arjun was the most exciting part of the story. Dry nudged me with a scowl. He was good at guessing my thoughts. "Go on." A king was made to kneel at the feet of a Brahmin. A Brahmin said to a king, "Your land and life belong to me." Who is the beggar now? A king said, "Kill me, but do not mock me." A Brahmin said, "But I do not wish to kill you. I wish to be your friend. And since you said that friendship was possible only between equals, I needed a kingdom. Now I will give you back half your land. South of the river Ganga, you will rule. The north will belong to me. Are we not truly equal, then?" A Brahmin embraced a king embraced a Brahmin. And the anger that the Brahmin had carried smoldering within him all these years left his body with his outbreath in the form of dark vapor, and he was at peace. But the king saw the vapor and knew it for what it was. Eagerly, he opened his mouth and swallowed it. It would fuel him for the rest of his life. I was hoping Dry would let it be, but he was like a hunting dog at a boar's throat, and then? Suddenly I was tired and heartsick. I thought I shouldn't have chosen this story. Every time I spoke it, it embedded itself deeper into my brother's flesh, for a story gains power with retelling. It deepened his belief in the inevitability of a destiny he might have otherwise sidestepped, to kill Drona. Yet like a scab that children pick at until it falls to bleeding, neither of us could leave it alone. And then you were called into the world, Dry. So that what started with milk could end one day in blood. There was more to the story. Whose blood, and when, and how many times? All that, however, I would learn much later. "What do you think Drona looks like?" Dry asked. But I had no idea. Years later, after my marriage, I met Drona in the Kaurava court. He held our hands, for Dry was with me, too, in his firm grasp, and looked into us with his hooded eagle eyes.
He knew of the prophecies by then. Everyone did. Still, with great courtesy, he said, "Welcome, son. Welcome, daughter." I was breathless, unable to reply. Behind me, Dhri made a small sound in his throat. And I knew that he saw what I saw. Drona looked exactly like our father.